Hello grade 11s. So in the previous video we discussed this thing called the quadratic formula, and basically all it was it allowed us to say for any quadratic, and we know that any quadratic can be written in the standard form that I have indicated here. For any quadratic that I have, I can write it in that form, and once it's written in that form I can in fact use a formula to determine its roots. And the formula we came to, which looks kind of interesting, is a fraction, and it's got minus b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac on top, and on the bottom we have 2a, and we know that in fact we can split this into two separate roots. Now what I want to show you now is how we would use this formula. Before we use it, let's actually do something simple which we know we could have done in grade 10 and then compare it to the formula to see it works. So for example, if I took this quadratic equation, I would suggest that from last year it shouldn't be too difficult to factorize using grade 10 methods. So I think I could write this as x plus 3, x plus 1. Let's check. X squared plus x plus 3x plus 3, all is good and well with the world. Now, if I want to find the solution, I would say that x is x is minus 3, because minus 3 plus 3 is 0, and 0 times anything is 0, which makes the equation true. If you'd like, add an extra step here, where you go x plus 3 is 0 or x plus 1 is 0, completely fine, but we're just using inspection for now, and by the same method we could say x is minus 1. And we can put these answers back into our equation and check that they make the overall equation true, but we're pretty confident with this. Okay, great. So now, if this new formula is as good as it sounds, it should give us the same answers. So let's see. Let's take the formula and use it. So we know that the formula is that, and the question we want to answer is that. So how does this actually work? Well, first let's see what A, B, and C are. So I would say A is 1, B is 4, and C is 3. And so now my answers are going to be split into two things. I'm going to get x is minus 4, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the positive root first. So plus whatever that comes to. So now I've got b squared, so I've got 4 squared, I've got minus 4 times by 1 times by 3, and this is all going to be over 2 times 1. Or I can have x is equal to minus 4, so this stays the same, but now I'm going to do the minus root of the square root. And we all know that square roots have positive and negative roots. This is why we get the two different roots. And it's going to be exactly the same inside the bracket. Now just coincidentally, that thing inside the bracket, b squared minus 4ac, has its own special name. It's called delta, and delta is often represented by a triangle, and it allows us to determine a lot about the type of solutions we have without even solving the equation. Now we're actually not finished here, so I must be careful, is that I've still got 2 times 1. Okay, so let's see what this gets us to. So we know that if I take this, I'm going to have minus 4. Now let's do this in our heads. We've got 16 over here for 4 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 3. Well, that's 12. So actually what I'm going to have is I'm just going to have the square root of 4 over 2. And if I take that a step further, well, now the square root of 4 is going to be 2. Minus 4 plus 2 is minus 2. Minus 2 over 2 is minus 1. Or, let's go and do the same thing on this side. Now, I know that, actually let's have a step up here. So, the thing inside the square root bracket we call delta is going to be the same on both things, except now we have a negative in front. So, instead of a positive we have a negative, but we're still going to have square root 4. And then over that, it's going to be 2. So how does that change the answer? Well, we've got minus 4, minus now 2, which is minus 6. Minus 6 over 2 is minus 3. Now, the good news is, it seems as if the mathematical universe is consistent. Because in the previous thing, we got x is minus 3 and x is minus 1 using the old method, and now we also have the same answer using the new method, which is great. I want to point something out here. If I look at this question, if I look at the thing called delta, we notice that the number inside the square root is a perfect square, which is 4. And the moment that thing is a perfect square, it means that the calculation to find x is much simpler, and also that the number we get is a lot less messy. And in this case, if we look at the roots, if we have to classify them, we would say they're rational numbers, and they're also integers because there are no fractions about, and they're also real numbers. But just notice that how if the thing inside the bracket, square root bracket, is a perfect square, it makes things a lot easier. Okay, let's try another example. Let's try something which is similar but not the same. So this is actually the same quadratic we encountered when we first got introduced to the completing the square, and we're going to use the formula this time to try and solve it, and we should get the same answer. So we have a is 2, b is minus 6, and c is minus 10. Now, I encourage you to write down the quadratic formula on a piece of paper. I'm doing this straight from my head. And so what I have is I have minus. Now the thing is here is the formula has a minus in it, but minus 6 is actually what minus b looks like. Plus minus the square root of. Now I'm going to need b squared. So but b is a minus, so be careful here because there's a potential to make silly mistakes. Minus 4 times by 2 times by minus 10. And this is all going to be over 2 times 2. Now, if I continue with this logic, I'm going to split it now into its two roots. So what we have is we have x is equal to, now minus 6 is just 6. I'm going to deal with the positive root first. And now I've got this whole delta thing. Now you can do this with the calculator as well. I'm just going to do it in my head though, and hopefully I get the right answer. So I get, actually let's do an intermediate step. So 36, and now I've got over here minus 4 times 2, which is minus 8, and minus 8 times minus 10 is positive 80. So really what I've got is I've got that, and that's all going to be over 4, or the other root is just going to be exactly the same. It's going to have the 6, and it's not going to have a plus, so watch out for that, because then it would be the same. It's going to be a minus. And in fact, now I know that the thing inside is the same, so we're going to get minus the square root of, what's 36 plus 80? We have 116. And this is all going to be over 4. And so now, our final answer, if we look at what we have here, we are going to get, let's have a look. Oh, excuse that one down there. So let's have a look. We're going to get x is equal to, so now what we could also do is we could bring that forward. So we're going to get 6 plus the square root of 116 over 4, or x is equal to 6 minus the square root of 116 over 4. Okay, so now, what have we forgotten?